Hey everyone, my name is Franzi, and this is the finishing touches part of our interactivity for the full browser Flash website. First of all, we're going to check what we're going to do right now, and the biggest thing we'll add in this chapter is the SWFAddress functionality. So you can notice up here that the URL is changing as we click through our navigation. The same goes for the header and also our back and forward buttons in our browser are actually working. So this is the kind of thing that SWFAddress offers. It communicates with JavaScript between the browser and the Flash application, and it allows you to add all of this accessibility to your app. Also, we'll add the background tiling. So we'll use a class that I've gotten off of some discussion somewhere and added some functionality to it, so you can actually use a movie clip or a sprite to be tiled as the background image. Anyway, let's check out the folder structure first. So this is the site over here, and the SWFAddress.as, the SWFAddress event.as, tile bg .as, which is the tiling class, and also of course all of the JavaScript classes right here. Okay, we'll check out the index, so how to actually embed everything, right, and use the Swift object to embed the actual Swift file once you publish it. But right now, and for the SWFAddress, this moment, this is the important line. So we're importing our SWFAddress.js over here. Okay, for the whole thing to work, also we need to run it through a server. So if you just open the index through its absolute path like so, we'll get an error and the whole thing won't work as it should. But if you run it through a local host, and that's if you check it up here, so local host, and that's because I have a MAMP running, so it's we have a local server, so we can test this whole thing. Okay, and for that reason we'll go to preferences and Apache, and we'll change the chapters from finishing touches to site, because that's what we're currently working with. So site, open, okay, and that one doesn't have all the changes that we have right here. So if we run it now, still the one. Let's empty the cache and see if that's gonna work. Yeah. Okay, so we can test our SWFAddress from the local host from now on. Let's actually drag that link down here, so we'll be just able to click it and test it out. Cool. So right here below the navigation click, we'll actually use our SWFAddress functions and listeners. Actually, the SWFAddress is kind of the more important part of SWFAddress is the change event that it's listening for, and that one is either triggered by you when you set a value, and that actually changes the whole header and the URL, or by the browser when you click back and forth through the backwards and forwards button. So the first thing what we're gonna add is to SWFAddress, of course, and add event listener. We're gonna use the SWFAddress event and the change. Let's make on change function. That's EVT SWFAddress event void open and close. Okay, and let's trace evt.value, which is what you actually get over here. So if you click back in a browser, this evt.value will actually trace us the header or whatever value we've set to that current history statement, and you'll see it in a second. Just a sec. So if, yeah, it's the double D's that I'm always having trouble with. So let's run it now. So we have that slash over here. That's the default value that you get. Let's give it a value now, however, so we can see how that actually works. So we'll use the SWF and double D address. Let's say dot set value, and let's just say who are we? And here we go. Who are we? We'll also use the substring to get the actual slash away, because we don't want it to be in the header of our website, of course. But first of all, let's also write another event listener, and that one is actually going to be the init, which listens for when the whole thing initializes. It's not a mandatory one, but still I like to use it. So init, here we go, function EVT, that will be SWFAddress event void open and close, and let's set a value when it's initialized. Okay. And if we now go down here to the onChange, we can use the SWFAddress and set title, and here we can actually use the EVT value property to get it to display inside of the title of our browser. First of all, we'll add the text that comes before that. So full browser /site minus, and now we'll append the EVT target, not target, value, and let's add the substring 1, which will actually remove that first letter, which is the slash that we don't want. Okay, so if we run that now, and let's go to the browser and check it out. Actually, it's going to look the same because we have the browser set to that. So let's change who we are to test, and run it. Reload, and we have the test. Okay, you can see that initially we have the who are we, and then it's changed to test by our SWFAddress set value. And here in the onChange function, the set title is set to that test, which is the EVT value, and substring 1 because we're removing the slash at the beginning. Okay, so that's how we're actually going to set our titles for the browser. But the first one should be who are we, right? And if we run and check it out, it's because we need this indicator over here. So we can actually know that if we click on featured work and then back, we actually get back to who are we. But right now it's totally independent of the click, and we are going to fix that right away. So right now we check the selected section and basically condition all of our code to that. We'll create a switch statement right here, which is going to test multiple conditions, multiple expressions with this selected section condition. So if we choose it like so, and open and close, case 0 break, and we're going to copy and paste this a couple of times. Here we go. 1, 2, and 3. And we're going to take the SWFAddress set value and trigger it from in here. So who are we? Then it's featured work. Then it's, and also here comes the column like that. Here we have the news and the contact also. So news and contact. Okay, so the first thing we can check out if we run that is that we should already, in the browser of course, get the states changes. So if we click, we get the featured work, news and contact, which is already great. And for some, for some projects that's even enough. Although the fact that you can navigate forward and backward within the browser is a much bigger bonus. So we are going to work on that right now. So each time we click on a button inside of the navigation, the selected section is either 0, 1, 2, or 3. And according to that, it sets a value to SWFAddress of who we are, featured work, news, or contact. That means that this onChange function actually gets called from up here, right? And gets passed this EVT value, which is this contact, news, featured work, or who are we. Okay, so the next switch comes in here. And switch is extremely useful in this kind of circumstances where you need to check multiple expressions versus a one condition. So we'll set over here the EVT value and let's say sub string 1. So again, we're taking that slash away. Open and close. Let's add the case. Paste, paste, paste. Who are we? And let's just copy paste this stuff so we are absolutely sure that it's the same, because it should be. Right. This is featured work and news and contact. I think we can type. So contact. Okay. So we're checking for all of these conditions, and again, when we click on our navigation, these values get set, and this function gets called because of that. Right now we're actually going to do all of our transitioning, so using this animate out function, we'll do it actually inside of here. And we'll set all of the properties that we need to set inside of here. We'll also create a temporary variable inside of our navClick function, which will be the previous button. So let's do that first. If we go in here, var previous button object, like that, and we'll use it actually down here. So previous object equals current object, current button, and we'll use the previous button from here on out. It'll make it easier for us to, grasp right now what is going on and make the changes accordingly, because it's a bit confusing having this current button be current button all the time. But anyway, it works either way. This is just how we're going to do it, so it's easier to understand. Okay, so we have our previous button over here, and we are calling all of these functions. What we need to do now is to copy and paste this animate out into every one of those cases down here. So animate out, animate out, animate out, and animate out. Also, we need to change the section over here. So we need to say selected section equals 0, and let's copy paste that to every one of these. And this is now 1, 2, and 3. That happens up here by reading the EVT target name, okay? And it's still important that it does. But right here we also need to do it just to make sure that it works if we just use the back and forward navigation within our browser. First of all, let's do a little test. So let's open that up. Okay. Yeah, the problem right now is that this one is getting run by default right away when we launch our website, and that's why this animate out actually happens. So we gotta fix that first. And since our booleans up here, so we have our first section up, we can check that down here. So we can say if first section up equals false, and do this. So obviously if we don't have our first section up, we want it to load and everything to happen. But if we do have our first section up, and that's who are we, then we don't want that to happen. And since the default value is true, then this shouldn't run anymore. Okay, and going in here to localhost, we can see that it doesn't. And if we click, this one still works, so news, contacts, and all of that still changes, and the back button already works. So not too much work actually for what we've managed to achieve, right? And of course, first section up equals false if we click any other. That should fix that little problem. Run it, go back, and here we go. So who are we? And let's go back to featured work, and now if we go back, we get to who are we. Cool. One more thing we have to worry about over here, and we can see that in the browser hopefully right now, is that when we get back to localhost, first of all we have no address up here, and secondly that can cause a problem if you don't have the check that we have over here. Okay, so you do have to check for first section up, especially for the actual first section of the website, because otherwise if you by default set the address to who are we, that's going to run and animate the first section as if it was not there, and that could cause you problems. But otherwise, as far as SWFAddress goes, this would be it. But we want one more thing. If we go into Safari and run that, let's remove that one. Okay, we can see that the back button doesn't restore the states of the navigation, right? So if I click back, I do get the different content. The actual title over here changes, but the buttons don't. So let's get going. We have the button array up here, and we are pushing all of our buttons into that button array. So over here, button array push nav item. And through this button array, we are now going to specify which buttons should have listeners for either click and of course mouse over and out, and which ones shouldn't. So first of all, let's use our button array, and let's just start by 0, and .y is one property that we have to change, and -10, because this is the who are we, this is the first section. When that happens, we want that one to go to -10, which is up for 10 pixels, right? So this would be 0 then, and 0 again, and 0 again, and 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to copy and paste this into each one of these switch conditions and just change this one to -10 now, and -10 to 0, and everything else is okay. Again, down here, and this one is 0, and this one is -10, and the last one, this one is 0, and the last one is -10. And if we run that, and if we go into our browser and check it, click around, and now click back, you'll see that they change as they should. But you'll also notice, okay, that they actually aren't fixed. So I can mouse over and out, and they're going to actually go down. So it's still not the right behavior that we want from this thing, and that's because we also need to remove the listeners from this from the button that we've just clicked. So button array 0 dot remove listeners. And this is the function that we've prepared prior, right? So before we've actually started working with this, we have that in our nav item movie clip. Let's paste that down here and say 1 and 2 and 3. This is now going to remove event listeners each time we click on the next item. And we also have a little error down here. The remove listeners is not a function. Yeah, because it's an error. Okay, let's quickly fix this one. So list like so. Replace all. Okay, close, run, and now it works. Okay, and having done that, we are removing event listeners when we click on a button, which is the right thing, and also in this case when we click backwards or forwards inside of the browser. But we also have to add event listeners to the prior one if we click on the back and on the forwards button, and we don't do that over here just yet. We do that when we click. So when we click, the previous button gets added event listeners and the current button removes them, okay? But down here we don't do that yet. So again, we need to do what we need to do is to create that temporary, let's say, current or previous in this case, button object, and let's actually make that one outside, because otherwise it serves little purpose. And we're going to equal it to each one of these when we click on it. So previous button array 0, and let's do it down here, and also previous button array 1, previous button array 2, and previous button array 3. So this is a very, very repetitive kind of process, nothing too special. We're just reading into the arrays and actually changing the properties according to our design, to how our whole website should actually function. But we're now storing the reference to the the previously clicked button into our previous button variable, and now we have to actually add event listeners to our previous button when we click up here. So let's say if previous button, that means that it'll check if that is even set. Let's say add listeners like so. Okay, and let's check out. This time I think it should work just fine. Okay, featured work, news, contact us, some back and forth. And now let's click. Okay, the over and out obviously works. I can't click on it anymore, and that's it. Okay, so we've added our SWFAddress functionality. We have the changing title and also the back and the forward buttons work. Let's check out again how we achieve that. So it's all inside of the navigation actions layer, right? And it's, I mean, all this typing is just button arrays and changing the states of our buttons. Basically though, we are either triggering that SWFAddress on change function when clicking on any of our buttons by setting a value. So each time we set a value, we trigger that on change function and therefore launch all of our animations and transitions and changing the states of our buttons. And because we also want that to happen on previous and next button click inside of our browser, that also triggers the onChange function. So either we set a value right here, or we click in a browser forward or backward. Either one of those events is going to change to run our onChange function and do any of these conditions. Depends on which one it meets. Okay, let's now add our tile background.